Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Say good morning. It's for at least one of our panelists. It's already afternoon, so so wherever you're joining from in the world, then welcome to the US Trail Running Conference webinar. Today's session is going to be all about sustainable races, and we're going to be talking about latest innovations in producing green races, which is something that's really important and certainly close to my heart and very close to the hearts of our three panelists here. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm speaking from the lands belonging to the Arapaho and Ute peoples that we now know as Estes Park in Colorado. And today's, well, actually the whole webinar series is very generously and kindly sponsored by and supported by Marathon Printing. So for those of you that don't know about Marathon Printing, then just like to share that they're a family-owned company, and they specialize in producing custom printed items for endurance sports. And race bibs are probably their most popular item, either custom printed or stock bibs. But they also supply vital accessories for race directors like pins, bags, and pennant flags, as well as postcards, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, and labels. And we've actually used their bumper stickers for the US Trail Running Conference as well. And they are very good, very great company to work with, and come highly recommended. Oh, is Nancy on there already? Okay, good morning. Okay, Nancy, I hope you're doing good if you're at home. And so without further ado, we'll share. I'm going to share my screen here. And oh no, I'm not. Okay. Just gonna not share my screen. So bear with me a second. A minor technical fault here. Okay. There we go, nearly. All right. So here we are. Right. So we'll get to the slideshow and play from the start. Okay. Okay. Thumbs up if you're seeing the slideshow, please. All right, that's good. All right, thank you, everybody. Apologies for the delay there. So, as I mentioned, the webinar series is presented by Marathon Printing, and we're also working in partnership with our friends and colleagues at the American Trail Running Association. So it's great to know that Nancy is out there today. So, latest innovations for producing green races. Before we actually get going, I just want to say, please feel free to use the chat function that's on the Zoom window here, and we'd love to hear from you and how you're doing out there at the moment, wherever you are. And also, if you have any questions on the way through, then feel free to use the Q&A function within Zoom as well. And we'll have some time at the end for Q&A for general questions, but if there's specific questions on the way through, then please feel free to use the Q&A function there. And yep, Bruce Rayner from Athletes for a Fit Planet will be our first presenter, and he's calling in from Maine, up in the north. And Celia Santi from GU Energy Labs is in Oakland, California. And oops, sorry, wrong direction. And Chris Ayer, Chris, are you in Barcelona at the moment as well? Is that where you are?
I'm just outside London at the moment. But
just outside London. Okay,
yeah.
Okay. You're never quite sure where you're going to be, Chris. You get around a lot. So from Trees Not Tease, and he's going to be our final presenter. And then, as I said, we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. So we'll start off with Bruce Rayner. Bruce, whenever you're ready, you want me to move to a next slide, then just say next or slide.
Okay.
And
great.
Yeah, this picture is from Bruce in 2019 at the US Trail Running Conference, and Bruce, it's great to have you here again, and I'll hand over to you now.
Great, thank you, Terry, and it's great to be here with everybody. So I'm the Chief Green Officer of Athletes for a Fit Planet. If you want to go to the next slide, Terry. Okay, thank you. Athletes for a Fit Planet, I launched it back in 2008. Before there was there wasn't that much attention to sustainability in the racing world, but over the years, the sustainability has become much more of a central issue for all races, both because of the demand for it by the participants and just as important, demand by the sponsors. We're in a pretty healthy environment right now in terms of sustainability being integrated into races. This is just a list of some of the races that we work with across the country. Yeah, thank you, Terry. So I'll just start with the very basics of sustainability in terms of the impact on any organization, including races. There's the financial sustainability issue, which if you're not financially sustainable, you're not in business anymore. So that's kind of the fundamental component. As far as social and environmental sustainability, equally important as financial. Social has become much more of a relevant issue in the last few years for obvious reasons to everybody. And it's good to see some really healthy initiatives emerging within the racing community to address social inequality and to attract other, a rainbow of other organizations and participants. I'm going to focus on environmental because that's where we spend most of our time. So if you could go to the next slide. So in terms of just review the three types of sustainability. Environmental is focused on measuring, reducing, and offsetting your event's carbon footprint, and also the waste footprint and the water footprint, which we'll get to in a minute. Social sustainability, commit to inclusion. Financial sustainability that's your job. All of these practices require a plan. So the plan is plan, communicate, execute, report, and repeat. And every year that you're implementing in terms of environmental practices, every year you're implementing new initiatives and also continuing with existing initiatives and refining them. You're always in this refining process. Next slide, please, Terry. So in terms of the environmental footprints, there are three primary ones, pretty obvious to everybody: waste, water, and carbon. I'm going to talk primarily about waste and carbon. Water obviously is a very important issue in areas where there isn't a lot of water. Water can be actually divided into both fresh water and wastewater. In terms of wastewater, just about everything is regulated to this point. So portable toilets that often appear at races are obviously environmentally, the waste is managed environmentally, soundly from an environmental standpoint. Freshwater, the freshwater issue is obviously an issue around water, but it's also an issue around plastic. And so there's a waste component to water. We encourage races to go with a bottle-less strategy where you have bulk water and cups, and if you can get compostable cups, all the better. So the two things I'm going to be focusing on are waste and carbon. So next slide, please. So, as with every process, it starts with, in terms of managing waste, it starts with procurement. So whatever you're buying or whatever's being donated, whatever material you are using, and both disposable material and also reusable, it has a waste footprint. So the important thing is to really go through this list of questions before you purchase anything in the context of, is it sustainable? So what are you buying? Where is it made? And what is it made from? So all those elements important. You know, what are you buying? Is it t-shirts? Is it metals? Is it other kinds of swag? What's it made from? Is it recyclable? Is it compostable? Can it be reused? And what is it made from? Is it made from plastic, or is it made from cotton? Is it made from something that is again reusable, recyclable, repurposed, or compostable? And you know, every event has a different strategy in terms of what's what your audience expects and what the audience wants. But the idea for the race is to try and move it in the direction of being much more sustainable than it currently is today. There's so many components of race materials that are just a bit pointless in my estimate. But I mean, they are necessary because of the the demand from the runners and also from the sponsors. So in terms of waste, the okay, next slide, please, Terry. So what's your waste collection and processing plan? Now, sort of focusing down on race day when runners or whatever your audience is, triathletes, whatever the event might be. It's about how you're collecting waste and how you're processing it. So the objective of any waste management process is really about striving for zero waste. Zero waste is defined as 90% diversion from landfill. And any race, any event, it's possible and it's doable to reach zero waste. It might seem overwhelmingly impossible when you first start out, but over time you realize that you can actually achieve that status. And there are different strategies we can talk about in the Q&A maybe. So one of the primary components of a successful collection process is to have a green team on site who are basically managing and sorting and removing or separating recycling from compost and landfill. We started to implement, Fit Planet started to implement waste stations about maybe 10 years ago, launched in 2008, so about a decade ago. And we've refined it significantly over the last few years, where we can we can get to zero waste at small races and large races. The size of the race really doesn't matter. You can actually achieve zero waste through the waste station process, because and the next slide will show how we do it. But it's definitely the way to go. Also, as far as your relationship with your waste service provider, you want to make sure that you're getting the weights from all the disposed materials, and that goes into your final report when you report to your board or your and also to your participants. And then last one is the you want to calculate your waste footprint, so tonnage or number of pounds for each of those three waste streams, and then you want to include that in the report to your communities. Next slide, please, Terry. So this is an example of a waste station in action. This is a triathlon. It's about 2,000 people. This is the finish line. The finish chute is just off to the right, out of the picture frame. But it's about 2,000 people, and we had one waste station on site that managed all the waste that was coming from the finish area. So each runner got a full meal. They got beverages. They got a bunch of other stuff in terms of consumables. And I asked them to bring the waste to the tables. So you can see those 2 flags and the 4 tables. So they would put their trash on the table, and then our volunteers, our green team volunteers, would sort it in the middle. So we had three bins in the middle: recycling, compost, and landfill. And this race didn't quite make it to zero waste, but it was very close. And without this kind of a system, if you just let runners dispose of their own waste in paired bins, it's going to fail. You're just going to fail because it doesn't have, because especially the finish, when they're exhausted, they're not thinking straight a lot of times, even if they're good recyclers at home. So this is definitely the way to go. So I would recommend this, regardless of the size of the race. It's important to implement something like this waste station system. Next slide. Okay, just a couple things about CO2 before I hand it over to Celia. So in terms of your CO2 footprint, you want to really try and identify all the elements in the event that contribute to your CO2 footprint, which is, as I say in parentheses, pretty much everything. The expo and packet pickup. If there's an expo or packet pickup, there's printed material, there's electricity being used, operational vehicles driving the course or participating in setup and breakdown. There's fuel involved. Same thing with staff and volunteer transportation. Participant transportation, if you can capture that, but using zip codes, using the Eugene transit emissions estimator, you can plug in zip codes and get the distance for each participant. You could do it for staff and volunteers as well. And that will give you a basis for calculating your carbon footprint of the of transportation. The last bullet on the list is about scope 3, which is secondary, or 1 or 2 steps removed from the actual event. So it's the manufacturing of the t-shirts, of metals and that type of thing. This really isn't a focus for many races, but you should be thinking about it in terms of water usage of t-shirts, it's very water intensive. It's electricity intensive. It's often coming from overseas. They're not manufactured locally. They're manufactured in Asia and Central South America. So, think about your scope 3 emissions and try to address them as best you can. Next one. So this is a breakdown of the carbon footprint of a race, a big race, a marathon. And the 75% of the entire carbon footprint of the event is long distance travel that requires participants taking an airplane, flying in a plane. This is a minority of the total field, but it has the biggest impact on the carbon footprint of the race. Regardless of the size of the race, well, not necessarily regardless. Big races, they have a lot of people flying in, especially some of the majors. Smaller race is, the more local it tends to be. So your footprint in terms of the share of carbon footprint is going to be much, much different, and it'll be much less. But I just wanted to point this out because air travel is by far the most important, or the most significant component of your carbon footprint if you're a fairly large race. Next slide. So how do you tackle CO2? There's lots of things you can do to replace existing systems with more environmentally responsible systems like generators, battery-powered generators. You can reduce your carbon footprint by reducing the number of vehicles being used, by providing public transport or having a bike valet service or something along those lines. Purchasing solar or wind sourced electricity and offsetting your carbon footprint if it's if that's an option. And you know, every year you can think about every cycle of the race. You can think about, okay, what else can I do? How can I improve the carbon footprint? So that's about it for here. Next slide, please. And is up. Okay. So just a quick summary: environmental, social, financial sustainability, all important. Plan, communicate, execute, report. Every cycle you do of that process will improve your carbon and waste and water footprint, and you'll make your sponsors and your participants and your board very happy. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bruce. That's yeah, very a lot of great information there, and thank you so much. You've is it okay to mention that you've just returned from working at Boston Marathon and running a waste station there for them. So yeah, so thank you for you've been a leader in this field for about 10 years now, isn't it? So maybe more. Yeah. Oh, Bruce, you're still muted.
I said I'm not sure about being a leader, but I'm definitely in the market. And I take it very seriously. Well, I have a lot of fun too. It's a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Helping our planet is always fun for us as well. So yeah. So thank you, Bruce. Really appreciate your input there.
You're welcome. Happy to do it.
So Celia, you're next up. Are you ready for this?
Absolutely. And
absolutely.
I definitely believe you're a great leader, and it feels great to follow up with some of the great things that you've talked about. And I want to spend today talking about an initiative that GU has supported for the last almost 7 years, Terracycle. And Terry, you can keep it on this slide, but I'm excited to introduce myself. My name's Celia Santee. I've been with GU for the last 8 years, and I oversee our social impact and community building. And as you see from this picture, we are always looking for Terracycle angels to build on what Bruce was talking about and getting your events closer to zero waste. One thing that we like to say with helping divert wrappers of all brands, not just GU, from landfill is not today landfill. So to back it up, Terracycle is a company that brands such as GU, we don't have a municipally recycled item, our foil packets, any single serve nutrition. So we partner with Terracycle because they're able to upcycle all single serve sports nutrition into upcycled lumber. And I'll back it up. So we've been partnering with Terracycle since spring of 2015, and we have successfully diverted over 2.3 million packets from landfills. And to put that in perspective, that's over 11,000 pounds of waste that we have helped divert from landfill. And Terry, you can go to the next slide. So as I was mentioning, GU sponsors what we call a Performance Nutrition Brigade, and this program is completely free to participate in. What we do is we provide prepaid UPS shipping labels, so you can collect wrappers as an individual, as a retailer, and as a race director. One thing that I'm excited about is over the last year, UPS is actually now providing carbon neutral shipments. So that really means that the prepaid labels that Terracycle and GU are providing to you are supporting projects that offset the emissions of the shipment's transport. And this is really funding projects including reforestation, landfill gas destruction, water treatment, and methane destruction. And to show you a little bit, so over the last year, I've collected my own wrappers, any friends that I've been training with. I always encourage people to save their wrappers and give them to me. So I will show you. I have this big box. So over the last year, I have collected all these wrappers, and I'm excited. With tomorrow being Earth Day, I will be sending all of these back tomorrow. So just to kind of show like the impact of one person and what you can do with collecting wrappers. So after the wrappers are collected and shipped in with that box, what Terracycle does is it shreds all of the pellets down, all of the wrappers down. It's made into upcycled pellets, and the plastic pellets are made into upcycled items. You know, anything from upcycled shipping pallets, picnic tables, park benches, bike racks, playgrounds, anything to keep these to live on from landfill. Jill, great question. Is this also available in Canada? Right now, it is only available in the US, and we are hoping that we can get our international distributors on board. We do understand for us at GU, it is an expensive partnership, but it is a very important partnership because we think back to 1993 when we created the energy gel. We also were part of the single serve fueling movement. Oh, I see a few questions coming in. Let's see. Is this gel wrappers only and not the GU brand only? Actually, Terry, if you want to flip to the next page. This also is just a picture of all of the wrappers that I used for training for a 50K. Just to also put into perspective, it is not just gel wrappers, it's any kind of nutrition wrapper. So it can be gel, chew, waffle, bar, single serve drink, anything that's in like a little aluminum film packet. And here's just a nice picture. You can actually pack all of these into another. I was up using our drink mix containers, just put that UPS label on it and ship them off. Next slide, please. And yes, this is a bit more to expand upon. This is all brands. So don't think about just GU. And then to reiterate too, gels, chews, bars, stroop waffles, drink mix. And even if we are not a sponsor of your race, you can participate in the Terracycle Nutrition Brigade. All you have to do is create a free account through Terracycle, and there is a button that you can click to print your free UPS shipping label and divert all of those wrappers from landfill. Next slide, please. So a few tips and tricks with creating your Terracycle bins and drop-off locations. I think one thing that Bruce really pointed out as he was speaking, at the end of a race or even at aid stations, a lot of times the participants are pretty tired. So it is definitely most well received when there is one dedicated volunteer telling people where to put the wrappers. Even though this is something that's best interest with most people, just making sure that they are putting them in the right bin and people don't always sort correctly. A few things that we have seen really work in the past is encouraging the aid stations to really get creative with making their own boxes, having fun with it. Potentially, if you are a race director, maybe you could award the aid station with the most creative Terracycle bins or the most wrappers collected, a discount to a future race, or potentially even a free race entry. In the next slides, I have a few examples of some bins that race directors have used. You could flip to the next, Terry. And just really having an enthusiastic volunteer, like I said, a Terracycle angel, really helps people understand that all wrappers are meant to go in that bin. On the right here, that was a self-serve station, which we did see some other waste put in there, but we did go through afterwards. I do just want to hammer home, it is always best served when there is a volunteer or passionate green person standing and making sure that all wrappers are put in there to help make sure that there are other waste streams going into the boxes. Next slide. And here's just some fun ideas of ways that that volunteers have gotten really creative at aid stations. The Goo Goo Man, feed that that box all of the wrappers, and also think about other boxes that you can upcycle that have been shipped to your race. So here there's some t-shirt boxes that the volunteers decorated. Just using traditional bins that you may have and making sure that you're, putting on there different nutrition wrappers, because I think that really helps people understand what is supposed to go in those bins. And next slide, please. So here's some ideas that we have that we're helping encouraging the community get involved. We would love to talk to race directors about local run shops, getting them set up as drop-off locations. Not everybody is collecting enough waste on their own, and we want to help people get into retail and drop them off there. Also, we'll hopefully help people shop for items that they'll need to stock up for their other races. And thinking about running groups that may partner with your events. We're looking at just getting the most wrappers together to collect, to send in. As I showed you, I collected over the last year to make sure that I had a large box and I wasn't just shipping in a few pounds at a time. We just want to educate people on how easy it truly is to make your own collection box. Really, all this is about is shifting behaviors and thinking about not taking the easy step and just throwing it in the garbage. So I always keep a bag in the trunk of my car anytime I'm going to the trail to go for a run, so that I can make like small collection bags to empty into a box when I get home, and just creating real easy to follow habits that will make people familiar with Terracycle and think about that when they're coming to your race. In next slide, I think I may be done. Actually, this is one of the most important things. Make sure that you're really tooting your own horn. Show off what you have collected. It helps people really see the impact here. So these are some pictures from races at the end when they're cleaning up, putting all of the wrappers from all of the aid stations into one bag, and you can really see the impact that you're helping your race get closer to zero waste.
Cool, Celia, wonderful. Thank you so much. We have a few questions, and do you mind if I pitch them at you now? So
please do.
Yeah, Kelsey, your question is great, and we'll get back to that. But in the chat there, we had obviously cool Mike Casper. Hi there, glad to see you out there. He says cool coffee wrappers. I'm not sure what coffee wrappers means. Is that like individual coffee servings or something, or?
Yeah, I have a feeling. So Terracycle works with a number of different brands. So I believe they do have another waste stream where you can sign up for a free brigade to send in single serve coffee pods and wrappers. So I would encourage you to get creative. I believe there's also a brigade for collecting things like chip bags. So there are many different brands that will sponsor these brigades so that you can send them in with free prepaid UPS shipping labels. As the brand, we're funding that shipping because we do want to make sure we make it as easy as possible for you to keep those items out of landfill. So just by going to terracycle.com, you can search in their search bar multiple different waste streams. So in addition to nutrition wrappers, think of what else you have at your events, and if you may be able to find a free brigade that you can participate in through Terracycle.
Cool. And Jill's question about being, is it available in Canada? I was just thinking, see, I mean, the program itself, the shipping program may not be available in Canada, but could Jill ship? She'd obviously have to pay the cost, I'm sure, but ship from Canada to Terracycle, or is that going to be a different process? So, I don't know if you know the answer to that question, and maybe we can come back to that another time. But
Jill, if you're very passionate about it and you would be comfortable paying the shipping, you can ship to GOO HQ and we will ship. We'd be glad to. Like I said, we need to get our international distributors on board, and it is an expensive program, but we're very passionate about it. So hopefully in the future, we can convince our distributors to also have their own brigades as well.
Right. And Nancy Hobbs says, how easy is it to get the labels? So how easy is the process to actually get this processed and get the labels so you can start collecting and send off?
It is very easy. And we understand that sometimes there is a barrier with creating another account through a platform. So if you would like, you can even email terracycle@gooenergy.com. And our green team will be happy to just email you back a label immediately. So terracycle@gooenergy.com, and Terry, I'm sure that will follow up afterwards, so you can include that in the meeting notes, and we will be happy to email you over a free shipping label. So very easy.
Cool, thank you. Jeff Jackson, not a question, but he says he sent another 15-pound box of goo wrappers to Terracycle from recent races. So
yay, thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for your continued support of recycling, Celia. Jacob, is this UK-based only, or sorry, US-based only, or also internationally, like Switzerland? Wow, what a great question, Celia.
Oh, like I said, we just need our distributors to get on board. But I will tell you, I was just out at the Boston Marathon as well, and we had a runner from Slovakia who had been collecting his wrappers throughout his training for the Boston Marathon, and he flew with them and brought them to our booth to make sure that they would stay out of landfill. So that really made us very happy. So right now it is US only, but we are hopeful that our distributors get on board. We're happy to see the passion behind sustainability.
Yeah, very much so. And Jeff Jackson says you should also mention the points part, Celia. You can support schools and charities and such. So
actually, thank you very much for calling that out.
Yeah,
that is an important part that I missed out on. Every shipment that you send in, you also start to accrue Terracycle points, and these points can be donated to local charities, local schools. That is something that you do have to make sure that you create your own free Terracycle account, and then you can tag the charitable organization that the funds will go back to at the end of the year. So thank you very much for calling that out.
Cool, good point, Jeff. Thank you. And Jill, I'm glad glad Celia gave you a really good answer for your question. Mike Casper said, last time I used Terracycle for wrappers, I had to pay for them to send me a box. Are the boxes free to users? Then he says, sorry, I meant the label's free. So I suppose there's a differentiation here between a Terracycle system and the GOO sponsored Performance Brigade. So Celia, maybe just say a word on that.
Yeah, correct. So Terracycle also does offer, I believe they're called zero waste boxes, where you can put multiple waste streams in a box. But yes, that is a box that you do have to pay for because Terracycle itself does not have a sponsor such as like the Nutrition Brigade to be paying for the shipping and the breakdown of the materials into upcycled plastics. So specifically with this Nutrition Brigade, you do have to just put nutrition wrappers in, and then the UPS shipping label is free through our program.
And then Melanie says, I'm on the Terracycle website. What program do I select for our race to participate? And sorry if I missed, this was already mentioned.
Oh, don't worry at all. They actually updated their website. So I believe you will put in Nutrition Brigade. Let me see here. I'm just logging in quick.
Yeah. We're having a live check for you, Melanie, here. So hold on.
Yes, performance nutrition you can type in, and I'm also going to I have my call with them tomorrow, so I'll make sure that they put like gels and goo and can tag all of this so it's easier to navigate to.
Okay.
Performance nutrition free recycling program.
Yeah, brilliant. She's got it. So thank you, Celia, for that. And then last question. This is from Kelsey, Kelsey Banazinski, and great to see you out there, Kelsey. Wondering if you can go into a bit more detail about where these plastic pellets are used. What manufacturers are currently using them for pallets, tables, etc. We'd love to see the wrappers out in action and also know so we can support those businesses. That's a really good point, Kelsey. And Celia, if you can speak to that as well.
Yeah, it is companies that are looking to use upcycled plastic. So I don't have a list specifically, but that's something I can talk to Terracycle about tomorrow. One thing that I am pleased that they have brought to life is they now have a line of Terracycle made products. So one thing that we have done is we now have small bins. They market them as compost bins that are made of 50% Terracycled items. That we have out at events. So it makes it really a lot easier when people are bringing their wrappers and to show them like, hey, this is something that physically is made out of the upcycled wrappers. Sorry, I'm not at the office and have my props here today. But I will look online, and here I'll drop it into the chat, the Terracycle made items, just so that you can see some of the things that even consumers can purchase if you're looking to purchase something made out of upcycled plastics.
Brilliant. And Kelsey, that's a great question, and thank you. I mean, consumer choices is a very powerful thing that we can, you know, the decisions we make in terms of where we invest, where we pay our money, can have big impact. So thank you for thinking of that. Okay. So Kelsey says, yeah, thanks for the additional info. She would love to hear more. Yeah, thank you, Celia. Yeah, that was wonderful. Really good information, and thank you so much for continuing the passion for collecting and removing from landfill, or keeping from out of landfill, and keeping our planet cleaner. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for all the questions, everybody.
Okay. So Celia will still be on if you think of any more questions on the way through, but now we're going to hand over to my friend Chris in London. So yeah, welcome back, and good to see you. Good to see you here again. And I'll pass over to you now, and just let me know when you're ready to move through the slides. And thank you so much, Chris. And I'm glad you've been able to hold on during the wait. And yeah, we'll get you some rest soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Terry. Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Chris Sayre. I'm the director at Trees Not Tease. We're a European-based organization, and we're also growing in the US. And today I'll actually give a bit of a run through of what Trees Not Tease, what we do, and what movement we're part of in trying to encourage sustainability in races. And then I'll actually take a bit of a pivot and link into what Terry just mentioned a minute ago around consumers, runners as well, and the impact that we can have on our own footprint and on the environment. Because I think, and link to what Celia said, I think when we're at an event, we've got as runners, we have a footprint whilst we're at an event, but we're runners 365 days of the year, whereas we're maybe only at an event for 5 days of the year. So I've kind of taken a little bit of a pivot, and this is kind of feeding back from a green runners movement that we're becoming part of in the UK. As to kind of have a more of a holistic look at, as runners and as people in the running industry, how we can improve our footprint kind of throughout the year. So yeah, next slide please, Terry. So yeah, and next slide again. So yeah, just a kind of a quick overview of who we are at Trees Not Tease. As I mentioned at the start, we're UK based at the moment, but we are starting to work with events globally. So really, we're trying to encourage some sustainable change in events. So trying to make really simple decisions for runners when they're signing up to events, but also for race organisers. So Trees Not Tease, as the name would suggest, we're giving runners the opportunity when they go to sign up to a race to say, actually, hey, I don't want my t-shirt. I've got loads of other t-shirts. I'll actually plant the tree instead. So we're trying to create a simple choice where someone can say, actually, I don't want that. I'm going to go for a sustainable option. And tied into what Bruce was saying earlier, the t-shirts that we buy have got a really considerable impact on the environment, especially when the majority of them will end up in landfill. Kind of studies have shown that over 60% of people have already got 10 t-shirts, 10 running t-shirts. So giving them another, just because it's something that often we'll go to races and you don't even have the chance to opt out. And I've done some races recently where they're kind of shocked when you say, actually, I don't want your t-shirt. I would have liked the opportunity for you not to produce it, but I don't want it. And you're kind of giving it back to them. And we're seeing a real change in the races that we're working with. So we're working with people like London Marathon Events now, who they've said, we want to give people the option, and we're seeing the percentage of people that opt out of their t-shirts and say, I'll plant a tree instead. We're seeing that growing. And our process at Trees Not Tease is that we will collect all the race organizer will collect all that information about the runners who choose to plant a tree. They'll send that to us after the race. Then we've got our tree planting kind of arm here in the UK, and we're also developing relationships with tree planting partners in the US, so that everyone who chooses to plant a tree, if they're a UK race, they'll get a tree planted for them in the UK. And later on this year, if it's a US race, we'll also plant a tree in the UK and in the US. So we're just trying to show that there is a different way to do things. And as race organizers, it's about challenging that status quo. It's really easy to assume that everyone wants a t-shirt when you set up a race, or everyone wants a medal. Whereas the reality is that people have got a big bag of medals in their drawer. I've got a bag of medals that's weighs an absolute ton. Every time I move house, you're kind of lugging it around. These are kind of medals that you picked up over the years. So it's kind of challenging that mindset of this is what people need. And I think the really important thing when you carry out changes like implementing Trees Not Tease, or hopefully even doing away with t-shirts completely, or doing away with medals, is how do you communicate that to your runners? If you're going to make a change, communicate why, communicate what the impact is for these t-shirts on the environment, why you're doing away with them, why you're changing, or the medals, so that they're not shocked, and you can actually get them to come on board with you and say, actually, I'm signing up for that race because they're a greener race. And it's about changing habits, because runners are like everybody. If suddenly you have something taken away from you without any explanation, then you're going to be a little bit miffed. But if you are actually shown some information on, oh, that's the carbon footprint of that medal that's being sent off, it's a big chunk of metal that's being sent across from the other side of the world, or the t-shirt, then they'll start to understand. And that's what we're really seeing with Trees Not Tease, is that change, and we will match the price you paid for a t-shirt as well. So we'll make it super simple. So yeah, as race organizers, pop me an email and get in touch. But yeah, really a bit of a bit different twist on this presentation, which will take you more through the kind of the runners movement. And this is the green runners movement, a bit of a blurry logo. So it's something we've set up in the UK, and we've seen something kind of other movements across the globe. It's trying to look at our impact as runners, and we like to think as trail runners that we don't actually have much of a footprint, that we're off running on the trails, we're kind of at one with nature. But the reality is, as Celia showed in training, even just the gels and the nutrition we're using is absolutely colossal. If you then zoom that out across all the runners across the globe who are maybe flying to races or eating or buying kit, it's a really big impact. So the green runners is what we're trying to create, this movement to make people a bit more kind of conscious of our footprint. And we're trying to make sure that it's not an extremist side of things where you just stop doing anything and you just drink water and eat berries, because that's not kind of a realistic way of trying to create change. Maybe we get 5 people doing it brilliantly, but everyone else would be like, bugger off, I'm sticking with my usual ways. So we're trying to create a kind of a collective movement, and hopefully you guys as race organizers, it can be helpful as well to try and create this as unison, rather than runners versus race organizers or vice versa. So we're kind of looking at it as we're a running community as a whole. So Terry, next slide, please. So excuse some cartoons I pulled from the internet, but we really see that the areas that we have an impact on the environment are in 3 core areas where we can start to attack them. One is our travel. And again, as Bruce has touched on at the start, our travel is, whether we're going to training, whether we're going to races, whether we're going on little adventures, travel is just such a big bit of our own footprint. It's something that we need to bring up and make it really clear to runners that this has a really big impact. So if you want to make change, you start with the things that have got the biggest impact on the environment. And then also in the middle, our kit. Again, we might think as trail runners, we don't have a big impact, but if suddenly we sign up to a new ultra and we're buying the 37 item kit list from a fresh, and kind of buying all these things, buying them new rather than looking, okay, where can I borrow off friends? It should be kind of a real kind of front and center to try and use the resources we've got around us as well. If you're a race organizer that is It's got a long kit list. Is there the option? Do you communicate a way for runners to go on a kind of a swap shop kind of marketplace online? Are you making it easy for them to, from an expenses side of things, as well? Do they have to spend $1,000 to try and sign up to this race to get this kit list? And are they also going to be buying it all new? So kit is a huge thing for runners as well. And nutrition, I will touch on at the end. I'm not a nutritionist, which I've kind of said at the end, but a big part of our footprint and of our environmental impact as runners and as people in general is what we eat. So whether it's the wrappers, as Celia said, if we're having 15-20 gels every time we go out for long runs, and then throwing them on the side of the path because we're so busy, this has an environmental impact, and also the types of food that we're eating. So these are the kind of the three areas that we are communicating on as green runners. Next slide, please. So kind of obviously Bruce has given the example of a kind of a local race, and the carbon footprint. But this is some research done by the Paris Marathon, that their total carbon footprint in 2018 was 25,000 tons. And 94% of these emissions came from participants' travel. So this was 23,750 out of those 25,000 tons came from travel arrangements. And Bruce is kind of nodding his head. So the majority of these will be coming from people flying in across the globe to come to this race. And obviously, these major marathons have made a rod for their own back because they're famous races that people want to come and travel the world to. But as runners, what's our responsibility? If we were all coming from the local area, or if we were to only have runners coming from the Paris area, we could get that close to 2,250 tons, or just the kind of using the local Paris metro. So this is the kind of the reality is that as runners, we have such a huge impact in the races that we choose to do. And also as organizers of major events, it's kind of, how do we try to limit the carbon footprint of people that are coming to our races, while still being a kind of an impressive race? And it's really a kind of a challenge that we've got as racers. Obviously, naturally, you want to fill out and be popular, but if you've got this kind of if you've got this mission of bringing down your footprint, then yeah, it's a challenge that we've got to face as runners and as race organizers. So next slide, please, Terry. So as runners, what can we do? As I said at the start, it's unrealistic to say, all right, I'm never gonna fly again. I'm never gonna go to a race. But it's trying to instill a bit more of a kind of a thought process in booking the flights, rather than just saying, oh, that's a cheap flight, I'm going to go to the race. Is there not a kind of a cool race that you can do close to home? Is there, if you're looking to do a 100-mile race, is there not, in that kind of thought process, is there not a better race you can do closer to home? And then can we try and encourage runners who are coming to our races to find non-flying routes? So as race organizers, do you really communicate the ways that people can come to your race? Have you checked the start time versus local transport routes? Kind of the amount of times that I've done an ultra where it's too early for the local bus, so you're ending up having to get a taxi, and these kind of things that you might not think about, but trying to think about that runner travel route to try and minimize. And if it's going to be an early start because it's going to be baking hot, can we put on a bus that is communicated to people so that everyone can get that coach? Maybe it's an extra $5 for everyone, but the impact on that versus 100 cars coming versus 100 spaces on a bus is really, it's going to be really big. And then again, back to the kind of the runners, make it worthwhile. So this could be, again, if you're a big race, what are you putting on before the kind of the week before the race or the week after the race, so that runners who are coming across are making it worthwhile. So next slide, please, Terry. And this is kind of touching on offsetting. So this is both for runners and for race organizers. It's really important to not jump to offsetting straight away. Offsetting should always be a last resort. We can kind of use the bathtub emission. Our bathtub is filling up with CO2 and it's nearly full. So if we just use offsetting, then we're not going to actually, we're not going to turn off the tap. The most important thing is that we turn off this tap that is streaming in CO2. So every time we organize an event and people are flying across the globe to this event, every time we're flying across the globe to this event, we're filling up this bathtub, but we need to be turning off the tap. So encouraging people to take more kind of lower carbon footprint routes to our event and working with people like Bruce to try and reduce the carbon footprint of these events. And then if needs be, buying kind of high quality carbon offsets to then remove the residual amount. Next slide, please. And then kind of looking at kit finally, and this is where Trees Not Teas ties in. So as I said, 60% of runners have already got 10 t-shirts. So people really don't need this extra kit. So whether it's at a race, kind of a race setup, or at home when you're looking to buy new kit for training, the reality is we don't need more kit. Next slide, please. Yeah, at the same time of everyone having this kind of drawers full of kit at home, the running kit market is absolutely colossal. It's $36.8 billion in 2021. This is for kind of sports and training kit. And at the same time, 10% of global emissions come from fashion, and 85% of textiles go to the dump each year. So it's this ridiculous cycle of buy stuff that you don't need, takes up a huge global footprint, and it all ends up in landfill. It's being sent, or it's being sent to the developing world on the kind of the assumption that people out there want it. It's then being burnt. If you look at documentaries that's happening in South America, it's just being burnt, and the impact on health, air health, and in the local areas is absolutely, it's a kind of a real downward spiral. Next slide, please. And obviously it's challenging as runners and as events. We're being kind of pushed to, and from sponsors as well, we're being pushed to buy new shoes. We're being pushed to, we're kind of seeing the Golden Trail series, people flying around the world all the time to do these events, and they're sharing them on Instagram. So it's hard to kind of create these changes, but we've got to, as runners and as events, be much more conscious to try and create sustainable local events. Next slide, please. So again, looking at mainly at runners, but also I'll reiterate this to racers. So from a racer's side, it's really important to start again questioning every little item that we give to runners that come to our event. So whether that is the bib number. So I've seen some bib number that's now been printed on recycled kit. So reducing that paper, which isn't often, if you've got the chip on the paper, it's not being recycled. Someone will get home and they'll just put it straight in the bin. Think of the kind of the life cycle of every item that you give to them. Think of you might think it's great to give them the little kind of drawstring bag that they then take their kit home in with a few throwaway goodies. But in reality, that's just going to end up in a drawer. And then the next time they do their spring clean, that will then end up in landfill. And the same with t-shirts and medals. It's just starting to question, looking at every element of your race. And that will kind of touch on what Bruce does, and that kind of water and all those kind of systems, and kit is a kind of a key part of that. And then as runners, we kind of really focus on how can you look after your existing kit, because the best kit that you own is the one that you've already got. There's no point in going out and buying more and more kit just because you've seen an advert pop up. And if it's damaged, learn how to repair it. And as kind of running events and running groups, can we try to help encourage people to learn about this so that we can kind of perpetuate this kind of change throughout the runners that are in our communities? And likewise with races, you've got kind of a marketing list of people that have signed up to your race. Can you communicate kit swaps to them? If you're an ultra race or a trail race where you need kind of niche bits of kit, can you help direct them to places where they can get it secondhand, or they can swap it with each other, especially if it's just one race a year where they're going to need these kind of key pieces of kit. And yeah, as I said, create kit swaps, especially with new runners who are coming to your events, who are probably going to go and think, oh, I'm going to buy everything brand new. And people like Rerun Clothing, who are in the UK, are kind of a really good inspiration for that. And then next. And then, yeah, race nutrition, we've already touched on this. So Celia's already done this. But yeah, making sure that you're not throwing away your kit on your gels on the side of the road, and making sure that you're recycling those, because of the amount of times that you see this in training, obviously not to this extent in training, but kind of gels on the side of the roads, animals end up kind of eating them, or they just end up into water systems. And as runners, we have a big responsibility. Next slide. And then we can kind of go over this quickly, but then, yeah, kind of what we eat, more broadly speaking, has a huge impact on the environment. So 30% of our own individual footprint comes from the food that we eat. So being able to eat fresh, eat local is really important. Terry, next slide, please. And I think this is kind of kind of a rule that we try to kind of instill across the race organizers that we work with, and also the runners, is that there's absolutely no point in trying to create an extreme version and trying to make sure that everyone does everything perfectly, because we're going to isolate people. If there's no point in having 15-20% of people doing everything brilliantly, we need 80-90% of people making a really good effort to have the change that we need to see in the world. So that everything we do as racers, we need to kind of keep communicating this, that we're getting everyone together and creating change across all of our runners and across all the individuals that make up the running community. Next. So yeah, these are just some tips as from a kind of a nutrition side of things. This isn't relevant for race organizers here, but just trying to cut down our meat intake for 1 to 2 days a week. We're not pushing everyone as green runners to become vegan and vegetarian. It'd be great if they want to do that, but it's all about creating kind of positive change. Thank you, Terry. And then speaking out, the biggest voice we've got as runners is the ability to speak out and put pressure on, or encourage rather than put pressure on brands to speak to racers, speak to brands, and kind of encourage positive change and say, look, if you do this, we love your race already, but I think you can do this. So this is the kind of what we're trying to create as the green runners, is that kind of positive movement, the positive encouragement. And I think with that, I'm done. And you can follow us at Trees Not Tease and find out more about the Trees Not Tease movement and what we're trying to create with racers. Thank you, Terry.
Okay, thank you, Chris. We got a couple of questions here. Mike Casper says, maybe I missed this. Does Trees Not Tease also plant trees in the US? So if you could maybe touch on that again, Chris.
Yeah, so we're looking for a tree planting partner. So if anyone knows a tree planting partner in the US that would love to receive money to plant trees, and that's the position. I've contacted lots and have had little response back. So we're actively looking for a partner that can take our money or take the money from the racers and help us plant trees. So if anyone has got that, I'm speaking to a few different people, but getting little back. So the aim is exactly that, to be planting a tree for everyone who chooses Trees Not Tease from a US race. And we're working with, I think, about 10 to 15 different races already in the US, or race organizers, that is, across 30 plus races. But if anyone knows a tree planting partner in the US that would be keen to plant trees, let me know.
Yeah, and question from Mike Casper, and this kind of touches on something you mentioned, Chris. So my race uses chips on bibs. Is there a resource that takes used chips and or bibs? And then Jeff Jackson came back, and thank you, Jeff, for this. Terracycle told me they accept bibs in their sporting goods zero waste box. When chips were bigger, I cut them out. Now they're so slim, I don't do that. Bruce, you're nodding. Is that something you'd agree with on the chip side?
Yeah, we've recycled bibs with the film chips still on them, and they accept it. It's a specialized company that does it, but you can track it down on Google, I'm sure.
Correct.
I could probably provide it in the notes as well.
Excellent.
Here in the US.
Yeah, great question, Mike, and thank you for that answer, Jeff, and for supporting that, Bruce. Then, Chris, this is one for you. So this is Jill. Again, great questions this morning, Jill. Are there any statistics available on how many participants choose to forego T-shirts or medals in North American events, trail or road, or resources to predict? As a race organization, we have to order sufficient T-shirts and medals, often weeks or months in advance of the race event. Do not want to under-purchase, but also not over-purchase. So, Chris, if you could maybe comment specifically on the shirt side with the races you worked with so far.
So I don't have any statistics to hand in terms of the percentages that are being kind of ordered in the US races, but I know in the UK we're kind of getting into the high 20s of people already that are opting out of the T-shirt, and into trail, kind of more in the trail space, we're seeing races get over kind of 60%. And these are kind of the races where people are coming back and back. And in terms of the process, which hopefully help kind of prevent you ordering too many T-shirts, you'll put the kind of in registration, you'll change that and you'll start taking orders from the start. And then typically the order kind of racers would be ordering the t-shirts maybe kind of a month or so in advance after the kind of the bookings are closed. So at that stage, you'd already know how many people have chosen the t-shirt versus how many people have chosen the tree. So you should already know the percentage of people up front that have opted out. And one thing we would encourage racers to do as well is to not date the t-shirts, so that if you end up with surplus t-shirts, it doesn't all say 2020. The amount of 2020 t-shirts that I think are probably sitting in someone's cupboard somewhere, or even worse, in landfill, because they were dated for a year that I don't think any running event took place, is pretty scary. But yeah, feel free to pop me an email separately on that, and I can kind of talk you through the process, and maybe put you in touch with some of our US race organizers, so that they can kind of help you out with the timings.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. So yeah, for any race organization that race organizers that are looking to maybe have a further conversation with any of our panelists, then I can speak from my own experience that all three of them are very amenable to responding to emails and those kind of questions. So so feel free to reach out to our panelists, and thank you so much for being here. So yeah, thank you so much everybody out there for your participation. We've gone slightly over 12 o'clock, so apologies if we're keeping anybody away from lunch or school or other activities. And as always, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any comments or questions. And our next webinar is May the 26th at 11 a.m. Mountain Time again, and we're going to be talking about producing safer races. So yeah, after some of the recent issues around safety with some races, then I think a hot topic for us to discuss. So so thank you everybody for being out there. Big round of thanks to everybody for the panelists. So Bruce, Celia, and Chris, thank you so much for being here, contributing to this really important conversation. And I think one thing is clear is, if we, we've had mentioned mindset several times during the individual presentations, and I think it's clear that if we try and use the same mindset to solve the problem as we used to create it, then we're not going to get very far. We need to use a different mindset, because that's the only way we're going to make effective change. And so thank you so much for our panelists for helping support this, and we look forward to for everybody to be able to do their piece for yeah, Mike, that's a great comment. Commitment to a better planet for everybody, and it's Earth Day tomorrow, so so have a great Earth Day, everybody, and hope everybody gets to celebrate the great outdoors in some way, and thinks about new ways to help save the planet and reduce our emissions. So thank you, everybody. Take care. I'm going to take the recording off now, and